Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Leadership Project, where we inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo. Today's topic is all about coaching. Over the past decade, coaching and positive psychology has taken the world by storm, with people from all walks of life, all stages in their career, and all levels of an organisation seeking out the services of a coach to help them improve their performance and on a range of other topics. Today, we are joined by Adrienne Tilley-Lefevre, who has started her own coaching practice after a great career in the HR industry. We're going to address great topics like why someone would seek out a coach, how to look for the right coach, and how to get the most out of the coaching relationship. Sit back and enjoy this great interview. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leadership Project, where we inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo. We've got a wonderful guest and a great topic to share with you today, and that is the topic of coaching. And we're greatly honoured to be joined by Adrienne Tilley-Lefevre, who is a professional coach. She has transitioned from the world of human resources into becoming a full-time coach. And she's going to share with us what it means. What is coaching? Why would someone actually choose to seek out a coach, and what do they get out of that? And what does the typical coaching environment and agreement look like between the coach and the coachee? We'll also go into some key topics like what is the difference between coaching and other types of professional services, whether that being a mentor or consultant or a therapist. So without any further ado, please, Adrienne, say hello to our audience and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me, Mick. It's such a pleasure to be here talking about this topic.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Adrienne. You and I had a great dialogue when we first met, and if it goes anything like that, I'm sure that our audience are going to be absolutely thrilled with this. Now, I did mention that you came from a bit of a HR background, but please share with the audience a little bit more about your background and what led you to be with us today.
Fantastic. So yes, absolutely right. I had started in the world of HR. When I was doing my university degree, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I kind of fell into HR. It was a wonderful manager I was working with at the time for my uni job in retail that identified the things that he could see I was doing really well. And he said, why don't you do some work experience with the HR team and see what you think? And I took to it like a duck to water. I loved learning and development, and I loved recruitment, and I really excelled in those areas. And I think it was because of my natural bent towards empathy and listening and wanting to see people do their best and seeing so much potential in people that really connected with my values. So for me, it felt like the right direction to go. So then I did HR within Country Road, and then I went to where I learnt to what all the rules should be. It was a beautiful environment to learn all of the structures and procedures and ways of really thinking about your people in a very human way in a retail environment, which is a tricky thing to do. And then I went to Apple to learn to break all the rules, which was a fantastic experience. So I was there for about 5 years as HR manager for the flagship store in Sydney. And I learned an incredible amount there. And again, like a whole other depth of what it takes for us in our human potential to work with each other best and to develop ourselves as individuals, as leaders, and to work really well as a team. And then I went on to do HR in a few different environments after that. And then I took a big leap and went into change management specifically, and went into behavioural change and working with programs within that, within a PR and marketing firm that was focused on behavioural change as a bit of a niche topic, employee experience, which was a term not many people were using, but that I had believed in very wholeheartedly from my work experience at Apple. And so I did that for a while, and then I had a baby, and I decided what I should have done a long time ago, which was to do my own thing and coach directly. So that's what's led me here. And so for the past 8 months or so, I've been doing my own gig, coaching others and working also on cultural programs for businesses as well.
Thanks, Adrienne. We'll come back to that and we'll talk about your business coaching with Adrienne towards the end of the show so that people can find out more about that. Thank you for sharing your experience there. When you were talking, you were saying so many things that were music to my ears about what it means to be a leader and also some of the key attributes that you look for, such as empathy and also unlocking the potential in people. I want to unpack something that you did say from the very start in that early days in retail. You said that there was a really great manager that saw the potential in you. What was it about that manager that enlightened you or inspired you? Obviously, we have a broad spectrum of leaders in the world, some at the very inspirational end, and then we've got some that maybe do not fit that spectrum. What was it that you were looking for in a leader that you thought was so inspiring and helpful?
You know what? It's an interesting one because that particular leader definitely had areas for development as well. And he was on a big journey himself in his leadership. But what I really admire is that, well, we all are, right? None of us are perfect. But what he did do was listen really well, and he built really strong relationships. So what I really appreciated is that he could hold up a mirror for me and say, Adrienne, I see you, and these are the qualities I see in you, and I want to share that with you so that you can grow. And I just thought that's one, incredibly perceptive, but also, comes down to his listening skills and the fact that he valued that. And two, incredibly generous to share that observation and to give me that chance. Which, again, I really appreciated. And I was in an environment with a few leaders. So one of the other leaders in the particular business within Country Road that I was working in was also like an incredible person for giving feedback, really clear. And what was then, gosh, it was 20 years ago, I'm scared to admit. What was about 20 years ago was my first experience of clear is kind and just being honest with each other to really help someone see what's working well and what needs to change without it feeling like it's got anything to do with ego or anything to do with personalities, but just purely about trying to do our best. And so that combination of leadership that I was experiencing was incredibly inspiring and eye-opening for me.
So I'm hearing lots of different things there, all very good. The listening skills, the connection that you spoke of. Use the word, Adrienne, I see you. And that speaks to me about feeling valued and feeling like that you're bringing value to the company and that you're needed and that you're the fact you also used the word generosity and the fact that he was investing time in you and looking for you to develop. You also mentioned about he was also imperfect, and I pick up from that a lot of self-awareness, which I think is a huge part, and we're all a work in progress. There isn't a single leader in the world that doesn't have some level of imperfection or something that they need to be working on. So, some interesting things there. How do you build that now, those experiences from that leader? How does that reflect on what you do today?
It's interesting because for me, one of my core skills is listening too, and I greatly value listening. So I guess that's also why I really appreciated experiencing that being reciprocated. And so for me now, I guess it was through the beginning of my career to now, I regard everything as a moment to learn and to take the best parts from every experience of what can I do with this? What can this teach me? And what can it show me? And so I took from those leaders what felt amazing, and I made a commitment to share that with others and to do the same.
So that's something that I think you and I have got a shared background there as well. I've had a myriad of leaders in my past. Been lucky to have 3 or 4 very inspirational leaders, which is great, and that's helped me shape the person that I am today. But I've equally had some horrible bosses, absolutely terrible ones. But every one of those was a learning experience as well. Remembering very deeply how those horrible bosses made me feel more than anything else, and what were those actions that led me into those feelings to make sure that I don't repeat that into the future. And then, of course, with the inspirational leaders, what was it? What were the common traits amongst those leaders that I can put into my kit bag of skills or attributes that I can aspire to in the future? So I think the whole spectrum from inspirational leader to horrible boss, there's always lessons that can be gained if you look closely and you take those lessons on board in terms of shaping your own leadership style. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with you more, Mick. It's definitely a very shared experience, and I feel at a core level we really understand each other there. Yeah, look, I do. I think it is an interesting one because we can make a learning experience out of everything. And I think this is where it leads me to what you were also mentioning at the beginning of the podcast, where we're talking about different modalities and the sorts of things that lead us to where we are now. And some of those terrible leaders that I experienced that really, I had some experiences that really shook me. I've had a bullying experience, and I've had belittling experiences with leaders, and I've had to also hold my own to help others deal with leaders that were acting out in ways that were bullying behaviours as well. I don't necessarily think they were bullies, but I think many layers to that. But definitely the behaviours were very destructive and not helpful. But for me, what helped me in those situations, and what I was so grateful for, was a range of help. And when I was looking at those learning experiences, some of them I internalized a bit too much. And some of them I took as a personal attribute that there must be something wrong with me, which is why this was happening, or that, essentially started to shake my confidence based on those experiences. And it was a mix of therapy and coaching that helped me to understand them and also understand myself better in relation to them, and turn them into what I needed to turn them into good learning experiences, and to separate myself from what was not my issue, and also take ownership of what I could do to improve as well.
Thanks for sharing that so openly, Adrienne. Really appreciate that. And I think we will come back to that, those differences in the modalities between coaching and therapy shortly. I want to take a step backwards for a moment, because you did mention about you were essentially saying bullying behaviour, and then you put some caveat on it around, well, how did they end up in that situation is what I'm leaning to there. I want to take a little bit of a tangent here for a second and just see where this takes us. What do you remember of your own transition from being an individual contributor to being a leader when you made that first transition?
I made that first transition. Look, I remember it being exciting, but also quite scary, because you could feel an extra weight on your shoulders and a responsibility to the people that you were serving. You had to make sure that you were taking people with you, and you needed to make sure that they were equipped with the right information. So you had to be really sharp and across everything, but you also needed to communicate in a way that was going to be effective, that people would understand you and that they would feel confident and capable in what they were doing. So I definitely felt the weight of that, but also the excitement that goes with that. And I think, in my early days, I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself, and I'd had a bit of a naive perception that I needed to have all the answers. And I learnt over time to ask more questions, and it's okay to not have all the answers.
That's a powerful statement right there. It is okay. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. often it's just more powerful just to be able to ask the questions and to be inquisitive rather than trying to be the person that knows it all. And quite often when people are promoted and they're leaders for the first time, that's one of the things that they think that they need to be. They need to be the person that can answer every question, and that's certainly not the case. You use some powerful language there as well about it's scary. It's exciting, but it's scary. And I'm going to share with you, Adrienne, one of the biggest reasons why I started the Leadership Project. Well, first of all, there's been some ADP research that shows that only 16% of people in the world truly love their job and like their boss. That's a really sad indictment on the world that that's the stage that we're at. And then I started to unpick that a little bit further and think about the fact that most people, when they transition from individual contributor to a leader, they've often gone through years of domain knowledge transfer and domain training and skills, and they might be great at their craft, and that's why they get identified for having leadership potential. But when it comes to actually leadership skills and leadership activities, they're often thrown in the deep end without a lot of training and without a lot of help in terms of what it means to be a leader. And that's where the scary word, I think, starts to come in. And I start thinking about some of those horrible bosses that I've had and the ones that you see in the world. What is their reference point? If no one has sat down with them and really coached them and trained them on what it means to be a leader, the only reference point they have is to mimic the behaviour of people before them. And if they've had a horrible boss or they've had a role model of what a boss looks like and they just mimic that, you could end up with those kind of results. Any reflections on that?
I could not agree with you more, Mick. Absolutely. That is 500% my experience as well. I feel like our education system has fallen short of teaching us the life skills that we actually need. And that's why I'm here today. And I think this is why you're doing the work that you're doing. There's a big gap in learning life. And yes, there's subject matter expertise, but it's a whole other board game to be able to build relationships with other people and such a diverse range of people, which is what we need to do for our best problem solving. We all need to come together, but it's not easy and we bump heads. And actually, that's the other interesting stat is that teams that are more diverse actually feel, I think it was about 40%, it was Neuro Leadership Institute research that found this, that I think it was around 40%, I'll have to double check, but that those teams that were more diverse actually felt like they were having more struggle. But they were doing much better quality work, actually 60% better quality work than the teams that were homogenous. And I think that speaks to just how difficult it is to relate to others and to come together. It's not easy. And it does mean that as a leader, we're being asked to do two things. We have to be subject matter experts and we have to be people leaders. And those are two very separate domains for sure. And they come together and they work hand in hand, but they come from two different skill sets. And what we're constantly needing to do is emotionally regulate to be able to think clearly about the subject matter expertise, but also then to manage our own emotions to relate to someone else and have space for theirs and bring them on the journey as well.
Another very powerful reflection there, Adrienne, I think you're hitting at the nut of the issue, is that human beings are very complex. They're emotional, they're not necessarily irrational, and they're not necessarily repeatable from one day to the next. So you might have built up that skill where you are the best Java programmer in the company that they've ever had in the company, or the best finance person. But you're going from a world where there's relatively known rules, there's repeatability, 1 + 1 always equals 2. There's no kind of arguing some of the facts that happen in your domain skills. And all of a sudden you find out that human beings are far more complex than what your core skill in your domain actually is. All right, so you also touched on something that I want to explore just as a little side tangent, and then we'll track back to the coaching aspects. You mentioned employee experience, and you are right. This is a relatively new term. The company that I work for has a head of employee experience on the executive, and I think that's a relatively new phenomena for Cubic as well. And I'm starting to see more and more in companies, but it is a relatively new phenomenon. Share us what your thoughts are about employee experience and why that's starting to come to the fore.
Yes. Look, for me, it's been something I've worked with for probably 10 years, but like emotional intelligence, it's one of these topics that is just huge, and it takes a long time to get to the depths of understanding it. But for me, my first experience, before it was even uttered as a term, was at Apple. What I was experiencing in the way that we worked with our teams there was a total consistency between what we wanted for our customers and what was going on behind the scenes. So if the goal was simplicity and an amazing customer experience, then the goal was also to have simplicity and an amazing employee experience behind the scenes. Because how could you expect your people to deliver a beautiful show at the front if you're giving them something different behind the scenes? They have to be consistent, and the employee experience reflects in that customer experience, I feel. If you are giving your people a different set of KPIs behind the scenes to what you want your customer experience to be, be lovely and friendly to your customer, but at the end of the day, I just want their dollars in the till, you are going to see that lack of authenticity in the service. You're going to see a gap in the relationship build between employee and customer. But yeah, I think for employee experience, I'm so happy to see, and it's wonderful to hear that Cubic have embraced that role as well. It is a new role, and we are seeing more and more employee experience leaders being added into boards and into executive committees, which is fantastic. And it is about understanding that from before an employee even becomes an employee, when you're just a potential employee, looking at your experience of the brand, of the team, before you even come in the door, to when you are in the door, and to even when you leave and when you've left, to even when you're alumni of Cubic, for example, that how is that relationship going from beginning to end? And I think that's a beautiful thing to think of, because I think that means if you really want to live your values, not just as a brand, but as an experience, then you are including your employees in that. And you are really thinking wholeheartedly about how your policies, procedures, and your benefits and your communication and behavioural skills all lead to that place.
Some great sharings there, Adrienne, and some of the things I'll reflect on there. The experience that someone has with the company does start from that very first interview and the onboarding process and throughout. And when you look at end customers, they do look to do business with businesses that match their own values and belief in their own culture. And you need to have your employees engaged in what the company believes in, and so that they're living by those values and beliefs, because they are the ambassadors that the rest of the world sees when they look at that brand and they look at that company. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's move now towards the coaching activity. So you mentioned life-changing moment, so children, so congratulations, and then deciding that was the moment that you were going to go into this big and interesting world of coaching. So tell us what coaching is to you, and share with the audience what a coach does.
Well, I liken myself to the human solar panel, and I think that's my best analogy for what a coach is. I reflect what I see in others to power them up. What are your strengths and the things that you're bringing to the table that are unique to you, and that you do in the way that's unique to you, that will help you be even better. Just keep evolving and growing from those strengths. And And that for me is sustainable energy from a human perspective. That's our sustainable energy. That's the stuff that's at our core, and we can tap into it anytime. And the more we understand it, the more we can power up and share it with others as well. So for me, coaching is about tapping into potential and powering up people to be able to do their next best work, because we are a constant evolution.
I love that, Adrienne, the human solar panel. What a great analogy. I saw that on your website, by the way. It's a absolutely great kind of metaphor for what a coach is, and looking to reflect back the person's potential and their strengths, and also to empower them and power them up. I really love that. What do you think the difference is between a coach and, let's pick a few, let's pick a mentor? So many people have had mentoring, quite often internal mentoring within a business, sometimes external. But what do you think the difference is between a coach and a mentor?
Look, the difference there is about subject matter expertise. A mentor is really helping you within a specific area that they are already very strong in, and they're going to share that knowledge with you. And you as the mentee are going to go in very clear and strategically to ask of that mentor what you need. The responsibility does lie on you, I think, always, whether you're the coachee or the mentee. The responsibility lies on you to do the work. But what you're going to the mentor for is very specific knowledge from their area of expertise. And what you're going to the coach for is the enablement. So the coach is going to help you to clarify your thinking. The coach is going to help you to join the dots and find new solutions. The coach is going to help you understand yourself better so that you can bring more of that to the table. And also challenge your thinking. Actually, both mentor and coach share that part. Ideally, the mentor will pose some challenging questions and ways of thinking about things, but again, probably centered on that area of subject matter expertise, whereas the coach will challenge the way that you're thinking and what's the paradigm, if you like, that you're seeing the world through. And could you look at that differently and open up some new opportunities for how you could see something and therefore go at it?
Thank you, Adrienne. What I'm taking away from that there is that, so a mentor quite often will be someone that's in your domain and maybe more experienced than you. They might be 10 or 20 years more experienced than you. They've been there before. They do probably have a lot of empathy with where you're at in your career and what might be in front of you. They might be able to help you with some technical skill or some knowledge transfer, for example, in your domain. Whereas a coach may or may not have any knowledge in your domain, but is able to coach you through a process that leads to sustainable learning and sustainable change, so that you're working on things like mindset, working on unlocking your potential and understanding yourself a little more. Would you say that's a fair reflection?
It's a brilliant reflection. Thanks, Mick. Put it beautifully.
Okay, great. Now, what about the difference between a coach and a therapist then?
So the coach and the therapist will both help you to get unstuck, will free you of what is challenging you and that you're experiencing personally in your life. But the differences come in our training and our areas of focus. So a therapist is obviously degree trained, and they work through clinical mental health issues. And again, they have their own realms of clinical psychology or straightforward psychology modalities that will help you to understand your experiences and help you to, in an emotionally safe way, travel through those experiences and how they're impacting you in your day-to-day life now, and what your relationship is to those emotions that you want to change. In a similar way, a coach will help you identify some emotions and will help you understand how you're thinking about the world. But I, for example, would not be working on your mental health. I would not be supporting you to go deep into your past and to understand what those experiences meant to you. We can touch on those topics to take some learnings that we tap into for what you want to use to go forward. But essentially, as a coach, my focus is on the future. My focus is on, this is where you are here and now. How else can we look at it? And what can we see that you've got in your toolkit and who you are and in what makes you special? I'm listening for those things all the time. And then I share that with you, and I share with you what I'm hearing. And then I pose the questions to you and you do the thinking about how you want to take those insights forward. So I really focus on what is the coachee's ideas and the coachee's attributes and the coachee's experience to use for how do you want to take that learning forward and how can we power that up in a really powerful way. And the therapist will be more working within that emotional landscape in a safe way. And I really feel that there's space for both. And I myself have tapped into the use of both, sometimes at the same time, and it's been fantastic.
I think that's a good clarification to start with. And what we're not talking about is a coach is better than a therapist or a therapist is better than a coach. There's a role for both. And quite often there can be an overlap as well between the two, and even the one person can sometimes play a different role depending on what's happening in a given session. The takeaway I'm going to take from what you just shared, I'll add a little bit as well and see your thoughts on this as well. So a therapist is more about looking for what is wrong with you, and I'm going to use that in a nice way, whereas a coach may be in the spirit of positive psychology in the work of someone like Martin Seligman, looking for what's right with you. So therapists digging into your past and looking into things that have built up who you are today and looking to address maybe some issues. You brought up mental health, which has a big stigma against it, a stigma that we must address in the world. But the therapist really looking backwards, looking at things that have happened in your past and trying to address those, whereas the coach more looking at, well, what's right with you? What are your strengths? And trying to get you to foresee into the future what a future might look like as opposed to the past. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. And I'd say that a therapist will help you understand where you might have developed some dysfunctional behaviours based on those experiences. And the coach will absolutely be focused on, and again, how you're moving forward in a positive way. So they'll come at different layers of your being, essentially. And so when you do the both, that's where I feel like it's a magic combination. You're really getting into your full core and in your full understanding of yourself. You're able to work through the past, deeply know yourself, and then the coach can help you move forward as well and really move your thinking along and push that along as well.
Great. Thank you, Adrienne. One more comparison and then we'll go deeper into coaching. What about the difference between a coach and a consultant?
Again, it's similar to the mentor-coach comparison in the sense that a consultant is there to share their specific expertise. And a consultant is there to give you answers, essentially. They're there to develop the solution, to share the knowledge, and to put that together in a way that helps you move your project or whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve going forward. So it's not necessarily a relationship where you are developing your own thinking, although it can involve collaboration, which ideally it does. I think the best consulting relationships do. But essentially that is more about a specific sort of problem-solving scenario, I think. That's not necessarily focused on you. That's focused on the problem itself.
Yeah, really good reflection there. So a consultant, you're paying them for their expertise. You're probably looking for, if not a solution, at least some advice. And you are expecting that they're experienced in a very specific field and quite often not about the individual. It could be about the business. It could be about profitability. It could be about growth. It could be something to do with the business that you're working on. Whereas a coach might be not giving you a solution at all, but helping you to develop a learning mindset where you can grow and you can find your own solutions and trying to get that engagement and that buy-in so that the learning is sustainable. Your reflections on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that nails it.
All right, perfect. Well, let's talk about why someone would need a coach then. So we've covered coaching versus therapy, coaching versus mentoring, coaching versus consulting. Why would someone need a coach?
Yes. Look, people come to me at various stages. So I work with people who are very new in their careers and making maybe that initial transition into leadership. And I also work with executive leaders and seasoned leaders in how they're leading as well. But it doesn't really matter where we are in our journey. There's common areas that we're needing to work through and push through. What unites us all is that we're trying to learn and do better, and we want to perform better, and we want to try and tap into more of what the world has to offer and contribute more. And often to do that, we have to remove some roadblocks to that. So it can commonly be issues around confidence. Quite a lot of people also work with me on boundaries and how to, again, confidently hold the boundaries so that they can have balance in their life, but also balance in their sense of self, allowing the roles not to blur between themselves and their colleagues, or even within their homes, so that they've got space to be themselves or do work they need to do. Boundaries is a big one. Confidence is quite common. And I think the other thing that people come to work with a coach on is about that clarity in thinking. How can I get clear on basically, how can I problem solve better? How can I move the noise out of my mind and get better focus in what I'm trying to do? And a coach will help you to move that noise aside and create that sense of focus in the right way for you.
I do like that strong message that you're giving there about clarity. I think that's a big part of the coaching process, is to achieve awareness first, then to achieve some clarity of what it all means. And awareness is going to be the first stage of solving any kind of problem, and then clarity can help you sift through and move things to the side that aren't important, so that you can focus in on the things that are truly important. So awareness and clarity, I think, that's really two powerful words there that you're using, Adrienne. Thank you for that. The other thing that I want to reflect on that you mentioned about was that you're getting people from various stages in their career that are coming to you for coaching. Some people that are looking for that transitional coaching from moving from individual contributor to a leader role, could be career coaching. But you also mentioned that very senior executives also take coaching. And I want to share something with you that's very topical from now and get your opinion on this. Just overnight last night, the world saw Novak Djokovic win his 20th Grand Slam title, winning Wimbledon. And here is a guy that starting to potentially become undisputedly the best tennis player of all time, although obviously Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal also incredible. But here is a guy at the height of his powers in tennis, and he has a team of coaches. What's your reflection on that?
Yes, I think it's a fantastic point to make, and a wonderful learning to take from this present moment, is that we are constantly achieving together, and it takes zero away from Djokovic's immense talent and dedication. It is his achievement, but he has done it because he has reached out for support from others as well. He's been open to it. He understands the value in it. And with that, they've been able to help unlock what he can do. He can see different ways of performing physically and mentally to be at his best. And they can also show him, what can be different? What can you push? What can you focus on? And what do you need to be at your best? So that team of people are absolutely sharing in that success too. And it just, to me, it shows again that power of relationships and collaboration, that it doesn't take away from the individual. It just makes us stronger.
Collaboration's a really strong word there, and a really important one, because the coaches that he does have, they all play a different role, and they all bring different things to the table. And then what results is this amazing athlete who is potentially the fittest, the most flexible, and the strongest mentally tennis player that we've ever seen. So, great reflection there, Adrienne. Thank you. If people in our audience are sitting there going, I'd like to know more about this, what would you recommend in terms of how they go about finding a coach?
I'd say think about what it is that you're really wanting to work on, And then I'd say have a bit of a look around and maybe even ask people who they've used as coaches before and ask some initial questions about the coaching approach. So, for example, my coaching has come through the Neuro Leadership Institute. So I work specifically on brain-friendly ways of creating change, of setting goals and being able to better stick to them and have that forward focus. And also, again, creating that clarity that our brains crave and how to do that really well. So I utilize those skills from the coaching toolkit to help people. And if that's an approach that appeals to you, then fantastic, go for that. But there are so many coaches that take different approaches to help you unpack your thinking and set your goals. There's a lot of shared components within it, ideas with it. Some combine spirituality with it. Some are focused more on a specific, like building an online business, for example, and they might have a very specific focus within their coaching as well. So I would have a bit of a look around at what and who is out there, and I'd ask questions about how they roll and have a think about, does that feel right for you? And I'd also say have a look at where a coach has done their coaching certification. Because unlike a psychologist, there isn't a degree behind it, but there is an amazing international organisation, the International Coaching Federation, and they have a number of organisations who have been verified by them, who teach coaches in a way that's making sure they're taking care of the key components, the ethics of coaching, making sure that the way that people are being guided through conversations is psychologically, emotionally safe, and that the relationship has its correct boundaries, that it's ethical, and that also that the ways of coaching include those key skills of things like listening, and how it is that we go about it to make sure that we're doing those things for a true coaching relationship. That's just one example of one of the skills. There's quite a few components, but the ICF have measured all of that and they've verified all of these different programs. So if you can see that, say, someone like myself is a Neuro Leadership Institute trained, you could have a look and see, is that an ICF accredited coaching modality? Okay, yes, it is. Great. Then I'm comfortable to move forward. And then it's just about verifying that that style of coaching is one that feels right for you.
Excellent. Thanks, Adrienne. There's a few things that I take away from that. So certainly looking at the certification, but you're also, things that you were alluding towards were about making sure that you've got a good connection with the person. You're going to spend a lot of time with them, and it is a partnership between a coach and a coachee. So you've got to feel really comfortable. You're going to have all kinds of conversations with them. So that connection is going to be really important, someone that you feel very comfortable to be very open with. And then, as you mentioned, on the certifications, I think that's really fundamental. Look at the background of the person and look what training they've been through. That's really good advice. The next question I've got for you, we've spoken about awareness and we've spoken about clarity. And if I take a short step backward for a second, as opposed to coaching and mentoring where someone might be helping you with answers and advice and guidance, in this case, what you're going to get out of a coaching relationship is also very much related to what you go in there with as well, because the coach is not going to give you the answers. They're going to help you find answers, but they're not going to give you the answers through this kind of awareness and clarity and putting it into practice approach. What advice have you got to someone that's going into a coaching relationship? What do they need to do to make sure that they get a great return on investment and the best value out of that relationship as a coachee?
I think you do have to be very open and honest with the coach. So you can't really keep cards close to your chest. This is a very important relationship. And if you really want to do coaching, then you do need to open up and you need to trust that you can explore your thinking with this person. So if in the first interaction, and this is why I always offer a free intro session, because I don't want someone to feel uncomfortable. I'd hate to go through 6 sessions and having someone feeling like this isn't right for me. There's no point in that. You do make sure that you feel comfortable with the person you're having the coaching with, that you feel that they're going to push you in the right ways, in the right direction. And then during the coaching, make sure you open up and share. Share your thinking as much as possible. Share how you're feeling. Share what you feel is working really well for you, what feels energetically good. As a coach, I can normally feel that anyway. I hear it in the tone of voice and I hear it in the energy, and there's complete shifts when something really resonates as true and when it's really powering someone up or it's pulling them back. But share with the coach what you're feeling and thinking so that they can better understand what's working for you and keep using that to help you move forward. But the more you're open and honest, the more you're going to learn about yourself, the more that the coach is going to be, and for myself, the more I'm going to be able to put your strengths into that solar panel and power you up for good.
Excellent advice, Adrienne. I really appreciate that. So you're looking for that person that you will have a psychologically safe environment with, where you do feel that you can be very open and transparent with them. Like I said, you're going to invest with them. You're going to invest your time. You're going to invest your money. So it's up to you to be as open and transparent as you can be to make sure that you do get the best value out of that. So that's great advice. Thank you. What about a typical coaching engagement? So you mentioned that you do trials with people before they commit to doing coaching with you. What does the typical coaching engagement look like? Is it forever? Is it 3 months? What does it normally look like?
Yeah, it depends on what someone wants to work on. Sometimes there's a very specific issue that someone wants to work on. And in that case, it just depends on what it is. So it could be a case that it's 3 months, and it could be every fortnight that we catch up for 1 hour and we work on progressing that issue. But it could be something that only requires 3 sessions, that you just need someone to help power you along and to encourage you on that journey, or to give you some extra tools. So look, it might be something that's only 3 months of work, but it's only 3 sessions. Maybe once a month we catch up and I power you along, help you gain insights from what work you've been doing, and off you go and pushing on through to the next stage. But if you've got bigger goals in mind, and maybe there's a few connected goals that you want to work on, I'd say maximum 3, then that might need 12 sessions. And again, I would space them at 2 weeks apart. You could make it a little frequent or space it a little bit more, but really to have the momentum, ideally you're seeing a coach every fortnight, and you're working through big goals in small chunks. So basically you work together in the beginning sessions to really define and get clear on what it is that's at the heart of what you're wanting to achieve. And then once you've got that clarity, then we can break it down into what steps you're going to take to get there. And then as you're moving along each step, I'm coaching you and supporting you to say, okay, what can you do more of? What else are you learning as you're going? And again, powering you up along the way. And when your motivation might be flailing, let's look into that. Let's push that forward. How can we move through? So we really make it achievable each step along the way, and that relationship is helping you to power along as well.
Excellent, Adrienne. I think that's great advice. And I think I do like the idea of what you said about the trial sessions to get to know whether you've got a good connection with that coach, and then case-by-case basis as to whether it's something that you need a number of sessions to work through, or whether it's something that can be quite quick, 3 sessions, for example. So, yeah, great advice. Thank you for that. All right, so we'll bring ourselves towards a close of the interview, Adrienne, and there's a couple of questions that I always ask my audience. I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on yours because of the conversation that we had. So the question that I'm going to ask you is to think back when you made that first transition from being an individual contributor to being in your first leadership role, what was the most surprising thing that you discovered that you wish someone had told you but you didn't know when you first had that leadership role?
I think I wish that someone had told me how everyone finds it hard. I think that everyone was putting on the show. And that vulnerability and that openness, I didn't experience that until I was well into Apple. And even then, it came with a caveat. But so I wish people would just share more about how this world and leadership is imperfect.
Very good. I love that, Chair. That's really good. And you're right. It is surprising that when you get into those, you find out for the first time, like I said before, how complex human beings are. And you know what? Everyone else struggles with it too. You're not unique when you do that transition. Okay, and finally, Adrienne, I do this with all our guests as well. I'd like to give you the floor for the last part of the podcast. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, they'd like to learn more about your business and your services, what's the best way for them to find you?
Look, I think the best way is actually via Instagram or LinkedIn. I post quite regularly each week, so you can get a sense of what my beliefs and values are. And you can really decide if that feels like the sort of things that you want to work on and the approaches that you want to take. So my Instagram is coaching_with_Adrienne. And hopefully you'll see the spelling on this podcast. But it's kind of like Adrienne from Rocky, or the French spelling of Adriana. So I'd love to see you on Instagram, and whoever is interested, pose your questions, send me DMs, give me your feedback. I love hearing from the community and what we're all working through. But that's probably the best way for you to get a sense of who I am.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Adrienne. Now, I will put into the show notes the spelling of your name and also the links to your Instagram so that people can find you and connect with you. So thank you so much. I really appreciated today's conversation. It was very interesting going through the different styles of coaching versus consulting and versus therapy, etc. And I think it's been a great introduction to our audience as to why they might look for a coach and what to look for in a coaching relationship, and making sure that they get the most out of those relationships. So thank you so much. We hope that you stay safe, and really on behalf of all of our audience, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mick. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate this chat, and we've had such a great time. Always enjoy connecting with you and sharing our core values. It's energetically fantastic for me too. Thank you.
You've been listening to The Leadership Project with your host, Mick Spears. We really hope you've enjoyed this wonderful interview with Adrienne Tilley-Lefevre. We'll leave Adrienne's details in the show notes in case you would like to get in contact with her and find out more about her services. Some key takeaways here is that everyone can benefit from coaching in some way. High-performance athletes use coaching to improve their performance and stay on top of their game. Executives, people going through career changes, people that want to sharpen the saw and improve their performance in their everyday life. Please do remember to hit subscribe on your preferred podcast service so that you are notified of all of our future episodes. We are also really pleased to announce our new Facebook community page that allows you to engage with us directly, ask us questions, and give us some further feedback about things that you would like to see us cover at the Leadership Project. Now, please do take care, look out for each other, and always remember to challenge the status quo.